For my research presentation, I asked the question, how can middle schools help to narrow the science gender gap in the U.S.? Although women fill close to half of all jobs in the U.S. economy, they hold less than 25% of STEM jobs. In my presentation and in my research, I looked at some of the contributing factors behind this statistic and asked the question, how can middle schools, teachers, and individuals help to change and close the gender gap in science in the U.S.? I ask you to think for a moment, maybe even close your eyes. When you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up? Who was your role model? Who influenced you? And how did they affect the decisions you made toward a career or studies while in college? These questions are very pertinent when talking about how girls are influenced into pursuing STEM fields, careers, and studies in the U.S. When looking at the U.S. ranks in STEM, the U.S. ranks 35th out of 64 countries in math and 27th in science, according to a cross-national test known as PISA. Our science, technology, engineering, and math workforce is crucial to America's innovative capacity and global competitiveness. Yet women are vastly underrepresented in STEM jobs and among STEM degree holders, despite making up nearly half of the U.S. workforce and half of the college-educated workforce. That leaves an untapped opportunity to expand STEM employment in the U.S., even as there's a wide agreement that the nation must do more to improve the competitiveness. According to the Census Bureau's 2009 American Community Survey, or ACS, women comprise 48% of the U.S. workforce, but just 24% of STEM workers, as you can see in the graph on the right. This underrepresentation has remained fairly constant over the past decade, even as women's share of the college-educated workforce has increased. And in the two main largest STEM categories in the workforce, the first being computer and math jobs, women comprised 27% of the computer and math workforce in 2009, and only 1 in 7 engineers. However, in physical and life sciences, women made up about 40% of the workforce, up from 36% in 2000. So it begs the question, why are there so few women in STEM? Let's take a look at some of the factors contributing to the gender gap in science. They are lack of female role models, gender stereotyping, gender discrimination, less family-friendly flexibility in the STEM fields, and a gender pay gap. When we look more closely at some of these items, we notice that it's a systemic problem. Many experts say that a big factor driving the trend of lack of women in STEM is the lack of role models in the upper divisions of academia, which have been slow to change. Blatant sexism is almost unthinkable today, but its subtle bias persists at most universities, and it drives some women out of science careers. Female students conclude consciously and unconsciously that these careers are not for them because they do not see people like them. The effect is very powerful, in the sense that they feel like they do not belong. Gender stereotyping happens at a very early age and continues on through an entire educational career and beyond. We'll take a look more closely at that in the next slide. It's also obvious and pertinent that less family-friendly flexibility exists in the STEM fields. For example, female postdocs who become parents or plan to have children abandon research careers up to twice as often as men in similar circumstances. Furthermore, women who do not become faculty members, say in astronomy, physics, and biology, tend to have fewer children than their male colleagues, and also have fewer children than they desire. Finally, the gender pay gap exists and has not changed much. The good news is that the gender pay gap within science STEM fields is actually smaller than in non-STEM fields. The gender gap in science is systemic. That much is true. It's a cultural construct dilemma causing gender stereotypes about femininity and masculinity, which sets up status expectations and status beliefs early on. These can be fueled by societal and parental influences. In math performance, or a number of social psychological explanations connected to gender stereotypes, self-assessment of abilities, and work-family balance. Recent research on differences in math ability has shown that the gender gap in math performance and course taking has largely closed. Female performance on math tests is very similar to that of males. Girls take at least as many math classes in high school as do boys, and the classes are at similar level of rigor. Yet gender differences in math ability continue to play an important role in the debate about the persisting gender gap in STEM degrees. The debate largely revolves around findings that males excel at spatial orientation and visualization, and are more likely to fall on the extremes of the performance distribution in standardized math tests. And although girls perform as well in math and science as boys, there continue to be biases and factors relating to a perception of lower achievement for girls. The second major debate focuses on cultural factors. One interesting suggestion about the cultural side is that a number of studies suggest that females are more interested in jobs involving people and social interactions, and emphasize altruistic, and social rewards associated with an occupation, whereas males, in contrast, are more interested in jobs involving physical objects, abstract concepts, and place a higher value on extrinsic rewards such as money, prestige, and power. Young women tend to anticipate career-family conflict. And within the education and road to the science gender gap, it is interesting to note that in the theory of occupational choice, Hostler and Stage 92, Horn and Nunes 2000, Ginsberg et al. 1951, and Howell et al. 1977, there are three phases of decision making: early childhood up to about 11 years of age, which is dominated by fantasy choices; middle school, which is the time for tentative but unstable interests, capacities, and values; and high school, which is the time for beginning of realistic interest in specific occupations. In this final phase of high school, adolescents consider their own abilities, life goals, and interests, and the capability between their developing occupational interests and educational goals. If we consider that, we need to think about the equality, education, exposure, encouragement, and support that we are giving students, especially in high school and middle school, in order to be considering a STEM career. Whether male or female, we must mentor them, show them role models, expose and encourage them to seek out these options. Teachers, advisors, parents, and programs, they can promote and support students with an interest in STEM. In a report from the Girl Scout Research Institute, it was found that gender barriers in STEM continue to exist, but girls are aware of them. Interestingly, girls interested in STEM are higher achievers, better students, have stronger support systems, and have been exposed to STEM. It's important to note that African American and Hispanic girls have strong internal assets such as confidence and the ability and desire to overcome obstacles, which appear to complement and support their high levels of interest in STEM, despite reported lower levels of adult support, exposure, and academic achievement. This research demonstrates that interest among girls in STEM is there. It just needs to be primed. So what can middle schools, teachers, and individuals do? First and foremost, we must change the culture of STEM thinking one school at a time. Expose young girls to STEM by way of toys, games, arts, etc. within the classroom and beyond. Importantly, we need to introduce inclusive language in the classroom when dealing with students and STEM topics. Introduce girls early to role models of other women in STEM. Encourage girls to explore STEM and related career fields. Encourage participation in special programs, summer camps, etc. Support learning opportunities within the community, volunteer or otherwise, and serve as a mentor for girls in STEM. If we serve to change the thinking of girls in STEM, to disassemble the gender stereotyping and dismantle the discrimination, and take charge and educate, we can start to begin to change the world. Here are a few great videos to share with your students about girls in STEM. Two examples of what I've done to try and intrigue girls to go into STEM are being involved with Futures Unlimited, which I currently serve on at Oakton Community College. This is a committee where we hold an annual STEM exposure event whereby 350 local 8th grade girls visit our campus and attend workshops and talks by role models and a keynote speaker in STEM fields. The second thing I've been involved with is a friend who wrote a musical for high schools, colleges, and amateur theaters about an almost all-girl math team on their Adventure 2 regional competition. This empowering play highlights smart girls in the math STEM fields. I've donated to this production and am currently working to spread the word to have girls in great areas see this great show. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation, and I hope you get out there, get active, and get girls in STEM.